the main developments during the month of February. You can see that here in the room we have a bit of change of choreography, because today we expect immediately after briefing 110 students and professors from College of Europe in Bruges. They will join us for introduction to digital policy in Geneva. And they will join us also for discussion on how technology meets humanity. As you know, this is one of the one-liner and underlying topic for 2018. And we are discussing various ways and means of interaction, and this sometimes smooth, sometimes difficult encounter between technological developments and the humanity, or technology serving the core values of humanity. February, during the month of February, we have been having we notice intensification of the activities in the field of digital policy. And today, as always, we'll follow the following timetable of the sequence. Together with me is Dr. Stephanie Borg-Seila, who is editor of Digital Watch. She's a person, together with her team, who collates the information and who follows all developments which you can find in our reports and newsletter. Stephanie will tell us more about the main events in February. She will also then discuss in brief, explain our barometer, what's happened in February. I will reflect on the 5 major trends, and then we will move with the indication of the forthcoming activities that we have ahead of us in March. This is the plan for today. We'll start with the summary of the main events in February. Steph, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and hello to our online colleagues. So if we have a look at the main events in February, it was a short month, but still a few important events. I'll just mention 3 of them on the slide. There are the main ones, and on our observatory at DigWatch, there are even more events. On the 6th February, Safer Internet Day. It's the annual event that helps raise awareness about child online protection. It's mostly celebrated in Europe, but even beyond. So this was quite an important event and reminder about the children's rights in the digital world. Towards the mid of February, we had the Munich Security Conference, important because of what was said during the conference, and Jovan will go through that. At this conference, cybersecurity was on top of the agenda. Towards the end of February, and still ongoing, is the Human Rights Council, Human Rights Council. 4 weeks of discussions on human rights, but they will also touch upon digital rights. So that is the summary of the 3 main events.
Just notice that in our latest version we didn't include, obviously, Mobile Summit in Barcelona, which is going on as important.
Yes, it is on the observatory. Yes, and if we have a report from there, we will also include that. We go on to the main developments this time, developments for February. If we can move the slides, and we look at the main developments via the barometer. The barometer is what we use to look at to assess the prominence of issues from month to month. There are some issues which are practically almost prominent, and other issues which oscillate in prominence, highly prominent or not so prominent. And this month, the most prominent issues were security, e-commerce, digital rights, jurisdiction, net neutrality, and new technology. For our online colleagues, and even here, the updated barometer will be included in the newsletter. So February's newsletter on pages 4 and 5, so is the middle section of the newsletter, you'll find the barometer with all the updates, plus the little blue icon on the digital version leads you to more in-depth information and sources about each development. So we jump to the security part. The UN Secretary General spoke a couple of times about cyber norms and the role of the UN, but I will let Jovan explain that in more detail from the trends. On e-commerce taxation issues, again, very important, and a new ruling related to Uber. So in December, we saw that the Court of Justice of the European Union ruled that Uber is a transportation company and not an information services, an information society company. The labor tribunal in Paris this month ruled that Uber is an intermediator than a transportation company. It went a step further and said that the driver was self-employed. So we'll see what happens there with the different rulings and the position on and the question on whether the Uber drivers are self-employed or employees. A few updates on cryptocurrency, the cybersecurity aspect Jovan will talk about in the trends, but we saw, for example, that Venezuela launched the world's first sovereign cryptocurrency called Petro. Moving to digital rights, the main updates relate to the General Data Protection Regulation, which, as we know, will come into effect on the 25th of May. The Article 29 Working Party, which is the body bringing together the data protection commissioners in Europe, they released revised guidelines, and the question of the I can Swiss policy surfaced again. It's an ongoing issue there. On jurisdiction and legal issues, we saw that the US Congress introduced the Cloud Act. It's the Clarifying Lawful Overseas Use of Data Act. And that seeks to clarify the conditions under which the US authorities can access data which is stored outside of the US. In the newsletter, we will include an analysis of the Cloud Act, so what it seeks to do, what the provisions refer to. On net neutrality, so we, following the December's reversal of the open internet order, we're seeing that states are passing executive orders reinforcing the net neutrality rules. And on new technology, also some more developments, especially on artificial intelligence, new initiatives in India, and also a new good work plan. It's called in the UK. It's tackling mainly the gig economy, but it's touching also briefly on automation. So we'll also report on these new initiatives related to this gig economy and the automation. So that summarizes the main developments of the month, and I'll turn the floor to Jovan for the trends.
Thank you, Steph. It's great now. What we usually do at the end of every month, we do some sort of expert data mining, and we try to identify 5 trends. We consult here and there data in an automated way, but mainly this is analysis of our experts at Diplo and also our curators. Therefore, for this month, we have 5 main trends. And the first trend, as you can see on the display, is a renewed call for cyber norms. And for those of you who have been following developments, we know that the question of cyber norms have been in the focus for the last few years, mainly in the context of UN government group of experts, so-called UNGG, but also in context of discussion on Microsoft proposal of Digital Geneva Convention. Now, what's happened during this month is mainly related to UN Secretary General, who during the 2 events at the University of Lisbon, when he received honorary doctorate, and at the Munich conference, he repeated the call for the more prominent role of the UN in shaping new norms, rules, and regulations. If you read carefully both statements, his main message is that, and I can read what he said, for example, at the Munich conference, I do not intend that the United Nations has a leadership role on this, but I can guarantee that the UN would be ready to be a platform in which different actors could come together and discuss the way forward in order to find the adequate approaches to make sure that we are able to deal with the problems of cybersecurity. As you can see, and those of you who are involved in digital policy, his Secretary General is walking very delicate line, where he is offering the role of the UN as a place, but not indicating any possibility that could lead towards possible convention or treaty, given the controversies that exist. He also mentioned the first committee as a channel for this discussion. As you know, first committee of the UN General Assembly deals with the security issues. There are 6 committees. The first committee is in charge of security issues. First committee established UNGG, which produces report in the past. Therefore, it is clear that the Secretary General would like to have some sort of follow-up to the UNGG. As we discuss in our predictions for 2018, it is going to be one of the major discussions. Will we have the next UNGG? Under what mandate? There was a request from Russia, and there were also some pronouncements from India, but Russia would like next UNGG to draft the code of conduct, therefore some tangible instrument. Most of G77 countries would like to have open working group under UN General Assembly. Therefore, that will be the major dynamics ahead of us, and it is for the first time that on 2 events, UN Secretary General is indicated that he is keen to play the role in this field. This is the major development signaling, and we can expect during the next 2 months some announcements coming from his office and some new dynamics in this field. Discussion for the follow-up to the UNGG will pick up towards the next General Assembly, but most of the serious negotiation will be happening, I would say, in May, June, ahead of September and the General Assembly. A Munich Cybersecurity Conference featured quite a few sessions on the cybersecurity. There was very interesting discussion between Eric Schmidt and Kofi Annan. Basically, 2 of them had, I would say, a very nice exchange and views about 2 schools of thought. One which argues that there is no need for rules, and Kofi Annan argued that cyber problems are becoming serious and we need some sort of new rules and regulation. At that event, Kofi Annan also established and indicated that he will launch the new commission which will deal with the cyber issues and democracy, how cyber issues affects democratic systems worldwide. Few companies, including Siemens, IBM, Deutsche Telekom, and Airbus, launch so-called a joint charter of trust for secure digital world. This is another move after Microsoft and other players, and you can see the question of cybersecurity and push for some global regulation or global action, to be more precise, is coming from different corners. And now we have mainly European companies coming and requesting something to be done. They call for a shared ownership of IT security by governments and industry, and promoting multilateral collaboration in regulation and standardization to set a level playing field. And they also argue that cybersecurity should be included in free trade agreements. Therefore, this is that controversy that exists, how far trade issue should be overloaded by non-trade aspects, like among other cybersecurity. This is the first major trend. Therefore, renewal call for cyber norms, mainly signaling few proposals, and the major signal coming from the Secretary General Guterres, who basically indicated that he would like to play more prominent role, mainly as a platform, as a conveyor on discussion. This is the first trend. Second trend is related to GDPR, and as you can see, it is not confirmation bias, but more or less these trends follow what we predicted in our prediction for the 2018, which wasn't that difficult. GDPR is 25th of May is approaching, and there is quite a bit of nervousness worldwide about the impact of GDPR on digital economy. And in our analysis, we basically separated 2 groups of the major developments. The first one related to EU countries. Only 1/5 of European Union countries still have to introduce draft bills to implement rules with the General Data Protection Regulation, I'm sorry I used the acronym without explaining it, leaves for states to regulate. There is a need for one explanation. European Union has two major instruments. One are directives and the other are regulation. When EU issues directives, they require national law to be implemented. Regulation doesn't require national law, but in the case of the GDPR, there are approximately 50 gray areas where the GDPR intentionally left to the national governments in European Union, national parliaments, to specify how GDPR will be implemented. I'll give you one example. There is exception. There is Article 6, which is one of the most controversial articles of GDPR, which argues that the data of the citizens can be managed if it is, there are many rules, but three major elements are: if there is a consent of the data owner, B, if it is in the process of implementation of the contract, and 3, if it is justified by protection of public interest. This third one is sometimes used by International Organization of Geneva to justify the use of data. But the question is, what does it mean, public interest? Therefore, it is expected by national governments to specify what protection of public interest will mean in Italy, Germany, Spain, Malta, and other countries all over Europe. There are approximately 50 provisions which are still ambiguous, and the provisions that will require the more specification by national governments. The second part is related to the companies and preparation of the private companies for the regulation. And here some research by Forrester Research indicated that approximately half of European companies are ready to implement GDPR. To be more specific, 22% are basically said that 26 that they have already adjusted their internal structure, and 22nd that they plan to do it before 25th of May. Therefore, in the European Union, well, as it was expected, the situation is quite good. It is completely different when it comes to the companies worldwide. Only 27% of companies in Africa, Middle East are ready, 13% in Americas, and 12% in Asia Pacific. Now, this is going to be probably the most controversial part of GDPR, because some analyses are showing that companies, international companies in other regions, are not aware that the GDPR extends its implementation beyond European Union national borders. Therefore, whenever data of European citizens is handled, and whenever the company which handles and processes data, wherever it is located, it has to follow GDPR. Therefore, with these statistics, you can see that there is still a slow process in adjusting, and that will be definitely the major development ahead of us. You will see a few other developments which are coming from Brussels, which will accelerate digital growth. Therefore, the second trend is are countries and companies GDPR ready, and how far they are with the preparation of the new rules. The third trend is related to taxation, and as you can see, the title is, we'll go for the next slide. Okay. Is tax proposal, new details emerge, pressure mounts. Here we have to rely on the leak. This is the leak which Bloomberg got from the European Commission. And according to this document, which was leaked, European Union is going to propose during the month of March or April new tax regulation, which will basically introduce two types of taxes. One is a temporary tax, which will basically target the major internet companies. And this temporary tax will be on advertising revenue. If you can recall our discussion during Estonia presidency, there was idea to have a taxing of the overall revenue. Now EU wants to tax advertising revenue, and obviously, guess who? It is going to hit the major internet companies, Facebook, Google, Twitter, who are basing their revenue model on the advertising. And there is also indication, there were some complaints that it can tax all actors, but they indicate that the minimum advertising revenue for those companies who will be taxed will be 750 million euros. That's the stuff. You will correct me if I'm missing some important numbers. This is the first tax, temporary tax revenue on advertising, basically aimed at the major internet companies. The second tax is a separate tax, that it's a tax on online platforms, on Amazon, eBay, Airbnb. And we don't have that many details how this taxation will be introduced. And there is now confirmation on the old principle that proposal introduces officially the concept of virtual permanent establishment. We already discussed that in traditional taxation, you have legal question of legal establishment where company is located. Now, virtual permanent establishment is basing the taxation on the place where the additional value is created through advertising or through any other activities. There will be two major developments. One is the EU proposal, this leaked proposal. You know how it is going. Those of you who follow the Yes Minister, there were always intentional leaks, but we don't know how tight is European Union security. And that's probably, in many cases, leaks are a question of signaling and trying to test what would be the reaction of the community. But there is another important development where OECD is picking up their work on taxation. There was major complaint by the European Union that OECD has been moving too slow in introducing new taxation rule. Therefore, we can expect that OECD will publish their proposal at the end of April. Therefore, March, April, there will be quite a few developments in the taxation field. It will make internet companies quite busy. They have to prepare for GDPR 25th of May. They have to prepare for this new taxation rules. As you can see, and we'll discuss it later on with students from College of Europe, Brussels is increasingly becoming the place of, if we can call it, hard digital power through mainly rules of, through the ruling on data and ruling on taxation. This was the second major trend. The third trend is computer systems and websites are exploited to mine cryptocurrencies. We have been discussing the Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and as you know, Bitcoin in particular is mined through the solving of the mathematical problems on the computers. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of processing power. Now, the graphical cards, which have a lot of processing power in traditional machines, in Europe it's difficult to buy the graphical card because they're used for the processing of data. In order to get the new currency, Bitcoin, you have to do very processing demanding calculations. Therefore, what the companies, what is the new trend? It is called cryptojacking. Cryptojacking is the use of our computers for the processing of Bitcoin. Therefore, let's put in this way, if somebody cannot have a sufficient power to process those, to solve these mathematical problems, through the special script, some sort of malware, he or she will take over your computer. It won't do any damage, but it will use the processing power of our computers in order to calculate, to solve this problem. You will just notice a bit of slowing, maybe for 15–20% of the performance of your computers, but what would be happening in the background, basically the new Bitcoin will be mined. You know, the name is mining of the cryptocurrencies. Now, mining of the cryptocurrency is not crime, it's not against the law, but hacking the computer and cryptojacking of computer is against the law, and it is considered to be crime. We have a few reports, including the Tesla cloud system, which was hijacked to be used by miners. And there is a report from Russia that scientists working at one of the Russia's top secret nuclear facility were arrested for allegedly trying to use decide powerful research computer, supercomputer, to do the mining of new currency. This is the trend in making, but it shows also how vulnerable and is the overall system. The last major trend is related to child online sexual abuse. As you know, it has been the topic which we have been following carefully for the last 3 or 4 years since we started our monthly briefings. And on the 6th of February, there was a Safer Internet Day, and the question of child online sexual abuse came into the focus. Every half a second, a child goes online. And the demography of the internet user has been, age-wise, has been shifted to the younger generation. And obviously, it exposed them to the more potential harms and the more risks. And there was UNICEF call for the new activities, new cooperation among government, civil society, UN agencies, and other players, and to put the child protection into the center of digital policy. And few other initiatives, and you will be able to read it in our detailed report from We Protect Coalition and Council of Europe Lanzarote Committee. Those are 5 major trends. New norms, new cyber norms, the first trend, preparation for GDPR, adoption of GDPR, tax proposals in the European Union. 4th trend is related to the cyberjacking, using of our computers for the currency mining. And the last trend is related to the child sexual abuse, child online sexual abuse, and activities that could be done in this way. We will discuss. We'll discuss in more details the trends following your questions and questions of online community. But before we open the floor for discussion, Steph, what is ahead of us?
All right. Thank you, Evan, for the excellent analysis of the trends. Ahead of us, few events in starting from this week and going on to March and also throughout March. So we mentioned the UN Human Rights Council. We will have reports from specific sessions from the Council on the Observatory. This week is the EBU Big Data Week, also a few reports there. ICANN 61 in Puerto Rico. And towards the end of March are the first the open consultations and the MEG meeting, and in parallel the WSIS week. Not ideal, but they are unfortunately happening at the same time. We will have just-in-time reporting from the WSIS Forum Week. So we'll have the final report there also, and the daily summaries of what is being discussed during the WSIS Forum Week. I think we can open the floor for questions and discussions before we then update our colleagues about the new reports and upcoming things related to Diplo and the GIP.
Good. The floor is open for comments in the discussion. I just realized that I missed the vision of tasks within the European on position in the European Union. Countries who are for more taxation, like France, Germany, UK, they are keen, including UK, for EU tax reforms, because it would be probably more radical in taxing internet companies, while countries like Ireland, Hungary, Malta, Luxembourg are prefer for the global approach via OECD, because most likely in OECD will be less harsh when it comes to taxation on internet companies, because also of the influence of the United States, which is active in the OECD. Therefore, there is a bit division within the European Union. One school of thought, let's go with EU tax reform. The other school of thought, let us wait for OECD and see how we can adjust for the global regulation. The floor is open. Well, tradition is here. Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, I just have a question on the taxation. Doesn't what they're proposing conflict with the moratorium that was renewed in the WTO? WTO has always had a moratorium on taxation of e-commerce, and it was renewed in Buenos Aires. I think that's all it says. I don't know what the legal provision is, but it seems to me that there might be some conflict there.
Yeah, well, yes and no, but there is ambiguity. first 1998 e-taxation moratorium, which has been extended and now for 2 years. It's quite general. It was drafted in 1998. Some interpretations arguing that it's mainly related to the cross-border e-commerce transactions, while here we're speaking about taxation of the revenue and the platforms. Obviously, there will be a lot of overlapping, and we can expect more activities and possible action of the companies and maybe U.S. government in the WTO when European Union starts possibly some sort of minor Boeing Airbus-like tension that existed a few years ago. Okay. Could you?
Thank you. You mentioned the U.S. Cloud Act and on accessing data outside of the US, and I was just wondering how, if at all, it relates to something like the GDPR.
Okay, the US Cloud Act, it's on the line of the Microsoft court case, and it relates to the possibilities when the US, mainly law enforcement agencies and courts, can request access to data owned by US companies, but not necessarily registered in the United States. As you can recall developments with Microsoft, opposed the ruling of the US authorities to submit email and data hosted in Ireland on the computers in the cloud owned by Microsoft Ireland. Now the court case is still going on, and we are waiting for the Supreme Court judgment on this case. US authorities argue that Microsoft, as US company, regardless that their subsidiary is registered legally and incorporated in Ireland in the European Union, Microsoft has a duty to submit data to the legal enforcement organizations. Microsoft argued that it should be done to the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty. Now the Congress, facing this, they would like to regulate it directly through this Cloud Act, and this is more or less the major dynamics. Therefore, it is not necessarily related to the per se data and data protection. It could have, if the data of European citizens is requested to be submitted. It's more related to the request by law enforcement agencies in the case of criminal investigation and other activities.
Yeah, Richard Hill speaking. Yeah, that's definitely correct, but the question is very good. We had a long discussion of that actually at Joe Kanatachi's meeting in Malta, because the issue has come up. So the basic feeling of people who understand the GDPR well, which is not my case, but I was listening to experts, is that if the Supreme Court rules that Microsoft must disclose the data, which most people think it will, then Microsoft would be in a difficult position of having to comply with US law but violate the GDPR. If the GDPR applied to that case. Now it doesn't actually, right? Because GDPR only comes into force 18 May. That case is an old case. So, yeah. But it's an interesting theoretical discussion because there would be a future case. But that's not what the European Commission said. The European Commission filed an amicus curiae brief in front of the US Supreme Court, which they're all published. You can go and read them, where it basically waffles. Because I forget now the exact article number. So one article number of the GDPR would clearly say, no, you cannot transfer the data because there's no equivalence with the US. But then there's another article that kind of says, well, sometimes if it's a matter of international law, you can.
It's Article 6.
Article 6, exactly. And the European Commission is saying, well, you know, there's this principle of comity. And so they've kind of elevated implicitly. It's a very vaguely written thing. It's not very clear. But it basically was attempting to elevate the principle of comity to kind of leave a door open. So most of the experts there in Malta felt that this was kind of a strange thing for the European Commission to do, to sort of argue against the strict application of the GDPR. So the issue will come up. And then there was an interesting procedural issue. Now, once the data is disclosed, who could actually file a court case in Europe to challenge the decision to do it? And we discussed the legal niceties, and it's not even clear that there would be a reasonable legal path. You know, maybe somebody like Schrems, who's super enthusiastic, could do it. But for ordinary citizen, it's rather strange. The other thing to keep in mind is that this case is a very bad test case, because the individual that they're seeking the data from is an acknowledged drug dealer. So, you know, it's not trying to protect some innocent citizen or something. It's some really bastard criminal they're trying to go after. And that also is probably why the Supreme Court will rule in favor of disclosing the data. But it raises very interesting, it's always back, you know, with something, Jovan, you've been pointing out now for years is coming very clear now. It's this jurisdiction issue. You're going to have more and more cases where companies simply cannot comply with the law of two different jurisdictions because they're contradictory.
Yeah, and we'll be having more and more cases and more demand for the multilateral rules. I mean, this is how the telegraph and ITU started, basically. Countries were happy to regulate telegraph on their territories, but when confusion started, and they did it in the 18th century, they said, hey, we have to sit together. First bilaterally, then they realized that bilateral negotiations have limits, then they established the what later on became ITU, one of the oldest organizations. Therefore, those cases will probably create the new dynamics which won't be necessarily related to if you are for regulation or against regulation. You have to decide somehow who can solve this conflict of law. There is international private law possibility, but I would say this is more and more complex and complex path to take.
Yeah, and just a word on the Cloud Act. That came up at the privacy meeting that you mentioned that was just earlier this week. All of the civil society organizations there, including experts like Electronic Freedom Foundation and a couple of other ones, spoke very much against that law. It's not clear whether it's really got that much support. It's coming from right wing. The main reason is that it's basically denying due process because it would basically allow two executive branches, say the President of the US and the European Commission, to enter into an agreement, and then the exchange of that data would be greatly facilitated without judicial supervision. That's the basic thrust of the Cloud Act, is to make it simpler for the US authorities to get information without going through the court system of the other country, which is often required under MLATs today. Yeah. So basically, from a civil society activist point of view, it doesn't look very good.
Thank you. Roxanne, do we have any question online? That's also related, while we are waiting for the connection online, that also related to Google's proposal to have a special mechanism to bypass mutual legal assistance treaty and to have it simpler procedure for countries that observe human rights and follow the rules. Roxana, please.
Hello, everyone. From the online community, we have 3 questions that came in during the discussion of this month's trends. So they relate to 3 different issues. The first one is about cybersecurity. What place do internet service providers occupy on cybersecurity issues? Number 1. The second one comes from Romina, and it's related to the GDPR. There are many concerns around the training of new data protection officers introduced by this regulation. How do you see this evolving? And then the third one comes from Ginger, and it concerns cryptocurrencies. She finds the case of Petro, Venezuela's new cryptocurrency, extremely interesting because it takes the technological online issues across to the real life with both political and economic implications. Do you see this issue as affecting cryptocurrency in the bigger picture, or is this simply an anomaly? Thank you.
Okay, the first question of ISPs in all proposals now, including the proposal by Secretary General Guterres and other proposals, you have indication about the need of the private companies to participate in whatever consultation discussions on the cybersecurity rules. ISPs are not clearly indicated as a specific category, but they are part of this private sector community, and this is still ambiguous, and it is not clear in what direction it will move. Definitely, if we discuss responsibility of the private sector, that the roles of the ISPs will be quite prominent. On the training of data protection officer, this is definitely a new profession, which is developing very fast, and we know that few universities are considering training for data protection officers, even university degree training. Obviously, GDPR is going to increase demand for the data protection officers. I'm not aware, and I don't know details how far the training is going on and what is the current situation and what the European Union is doing, but we may hear later on from our colleagues Andrea Glorioso, who just joined us, what's going on in Brussels for the training, if you're aware. I know it's a different department, but it would be interesting to see what's going on. And then on Venezuela and in the petro as cyber currency, we have been hearing the media reports that the energy, the relatively cheap energy in Venezuela is used a lot for the mining because this is the key, the access of course equipment, but also the energy cost. And as Ginger indicated, the new currency is introduced. As far as I know, there won't be any direct cyber internet governance consequences because this is a currency like any other currency. Obviously, given the political context in which is what's going on in Venezuela and the conflicts and tensions, it is adding to the political complexity and the question how the crisis will be resolved, because this is the new source of income for Venezuelan government. But as far as the policy is concerned and the internet regulations, I don't see any direct consequences of it. Okay, if you don't have any other question, we have Steph wrapping up. And what is it?
That we did last month and what is coming.
You plan to do?
Yes. So from our end, 2 reports related to data. We had the report on data diplomacy that was launched a couple of weeks ago, and another report, data on data and international organizations, which is a summary of the data talks that were held here between September and December. So that's 2 new reports. The links for download are on the slide. Ongoing is the digital commerce course. It's almost at the end now. Graduation is very soon. And upcoming, we mentioned the just-in-time reporting initiative from the WSIS Forum Week. It is not the first time that we're covering it. This year it is coming earlier. Last year it was in June. So we invite you to follow the session reports and download the final report from the observatory. Newsletter again, it would be available for download this week, and end of March is our next briefing, the March briefing on internet governance, which is taking place on the 27th of March, same time, same place.
Thank you, Steph. Just one additional update, which there are so many dynamic developments at GIP that we haven't managed to coordinate. One new development is that on the 13th of March, we launch Cyber Mediation Initiative, which is a joint initiative by United Nations, Swiss Peace, Humanitarian Dialogue, and DiploFoundation. The main aim of this initiative is to see to what extent cyber tools affect mediation, in particular in the crisis. We refer to diplomatic political mediation in the crisis situation in Syria, Yemen, and other places. In wide range, how social media prepares the atmosphere for mediation, how social media, for example, can help mediators, and how data mining and other tools can help. It's a very interesting initiative. It has raised a lot of attention in the UN system. Obviously, as you know, the various mediation attempts are not going quite well, particularly in Syria, and there is a search for whatever tools and help that could be made in order to make it more efficient. Therefore, 13th of March, here with this 3 partner organization, we launch a cyber mediation discussing social media, artificial intelligence, use of big data, and overall process of mediation and diplomacy.
Okay. Thank you, and that's hot off the press. We'll communicate it.
That was the latest one. Now, as always, we will move to the regional briefings, yes, where we will disconnect our colleagues here in Geneva. We'll have some sort of continuation of discussion over a few remaining sandwiches and some refreshment, which we cannot offer to our cyber community. But with this, I would like to close our monthly briefing and invite you to follow carefully what's going on in this increasingly dynamic field, and see you at the end of March on the 27th. All the best for online community and to all of you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, once again, this is Andriana. I will be your online moderator and I will be leading you through the video updates from the local hubs. Thank you, Jovan, first for the roundup of developments in February, and thank you, Roxana, for moderating the online conversation and sharing questions with the in-situ audience. For our online participants, we will now officially start with the regional updates, so please stay with us. Firstly, we have Sita Lakshmi with the updates from Southeast Asia. She will take us through issues on cybersecurity and freedom of expression. Sita, over to you.
Cybersecurity. A.T. Kearney, a global management consulting firm, in February released a report titled Cybersecurity in ASEAN, an Urgent Call for Action. ASEAN, Southeast Asian nations that has $2.7 trillion GDP, is the world's 7th largest market and swiftly becoming an economic force to reckon with. The region's growing relevance makes it prime target for cyber attacks. Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam are global hotspots for major blocked suspicious web. The report highlights 4 urgent action for ASEAN. 1. Elevate cybersecurity on regional policy agenda. 2nd, secure a sustained commitment to cybersecurity. And 3rd, fortify the system. 4th, build the next wave of cybersecurity capability. The important action for cybersecurity is also mentioned in the last meeting of Foreign Affairs Ministry held in Singapore this month, as Singapore is taking ASEAN chairmanship in 2018. Ministers in ASEAN agreed on the importance of strengthening cybersecurity cooperation as the development of digital economy. ASEAN also recognized the need for better coordination of cybersecurity policies and capacity building efforts in ASEAN. I move to freedom of expression. Freedom House releasing a report on freedom of expression in 195 countries. Report published last month showed a remarkable evolution from Southeast Asia. A few years ago, Southeast Asia was a promising region. The economy was growing, democracy was on the rise. This year, based on the report, the picture is changing. Censorship is on the rise and internet freedom is declining. Recently, journalists were arrested in Myanmar. Fake news spread hate speech and incite violence against Muslims. Today, Myanmar has more journalists in prison than in the last years of the military regime. In Cambodia, an independent newspaper was shut down. Activists who denounce illegal activities of companies are being arrested. In Thailand, the strict lèse majesté is used to silence opponents, while the Philippines has a growing number of opinion shapers to push government agenda. According to the report, 7 of the 8 ASEAN countries, Southeast Asian countries, research has become less free than in the last year. That's my update. Thank you.
Thank you, Sita. Now we have Claudio Lucena from Latin America, who will give us their regional updates, as well as telling us all about the Venezuelan cryptocurrency, Petra. Over to you, Claudio.
Hello, fellows from Diplo. This February, the government of Venezuela has launched what it claims to be the first state-backed cryptocurrency. A period of pre-sale for Petros was officially opened February 20, 2018. The government plans to offer 100 million units of the cryptocurrency, which is backed by the country's oil assets. During the pre-sale period, 38.4 million units will be offered, and another 44 million will be offered by an initial coin offer as of next month. The technical community raises concerns about the feasibility of the project, pointing out that the government has not properly structured it. By Tuesday, an official white paper indicated that the tokens for the pre-sale would be available through the Ethereum blockchain platform, while on Wednesday, after the pre-sale period was already open, that information had been updated and changed to indicate that NAM blockchain platform would be used, which is the position of the white paper as of now. The national opposition criticizes the initiative, arguing that the strategy is merely a way to offer bonds and increase public debt by circumventing the necessary authorization from the parliament to do so. And the U.S. Treasury Department has also issued a warning that the initiative appeared to be a way to extend credit to the government, breach, and get around sanctions imposed on Venezuela, which could represent legal risks for people eventually investing on it. Another development to highlight in Latin America this month concerns freedom of expression and content regulation. The National Parliament in Honduras has approved on February 8th, on a reading by its Special Commission, a Cybersecurity Act which also contains measures to protect against hate speech in social networks. According to Article 6 of the bill, content can be removed or blocked upon a simple notification without the need for a judicial order. This is similar to an initiative that we brought here on October, raised by Brazil and Paraguay, but then it restricted itself to digital communications within the electoral period, which now seems to be extended by the parliament in Honduras to any social digital communication.
Thanks, Claudia. Now we have Andre Edwards from the Caribbean region. He will be telling us all about the local update as well as the local capacity building initiatives.
Trinidadian High Court judge makes landmark judgment in social media libel case. High Court Judge Frank Sipasa delivered an 18-page judgment in a landmark case brought by a couple falsely accused by their neighbor of sexually abusing their children in a series of Facebook posts. As no local laws address matters like these, Justice Sipasa considered social media cases in Commonwealth jurisdictions to develop a local position on the issue. The law recognizes that a libel is occasioned when a defamatory statement is made by way of written or printed words or in some other permanent form which relates to the claimant and which has been communicated to a person other than the claimant. The judge found that social media users too are subject to libel laws. People are free to say what they like, but the line is drawn when what they say can cause harm and cannot be justified. Sipasa's ruling makes ongoing efforts to adopt a robust regulatory framework in relation to information communications technology more pressing. ARIN initiative to strengthen regional computer networks. The American Registry for Internet Numbers, ARIN, and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, agreed to extend their collaboration to improve the resilience of the Internet and strengthen related technical capacity in the OECS. ARIN and the OECS agreed to collaborate in identifying and engaging key national Internet stakeholders while creating appropriate communication interfaces to support enhanced collaboration and information sharing. The OECS and ARIN will work together in overcoming the barriers to the alignment of national programs with OECS-wide initiatives for Internet development and share knowledge, experience, and best practices on Internet strengthening initiatives and support national Internet strategies. The agreement is expected to actively contribute to capacity building initiatives, research, and national strategies. ARIN has committed to sharing technical insights in support of the strategic direction of OECS Commission's initiatives and programs related to Internet numbering, network autonomy, and IPv6 deployment. ARIN and the OECS will also closely liaise with existing OECS groups and forums. The collaboration kicked off with a series of free ARIN in the Caribbean training workshops, targeting network operators and computer engineers in the OECS. Workshops are scheduled for Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Dominica over the next 3 months.
Thank you, Andre. Those were the developments from the Caribbean region. Now we will have the developments from Africa, particularly from Ghana and Kenya, from Foncham.
Greetings from Cameroon. I am Foncham Denis, giving you internet governance updates for the month of February for the African region. I start in Ghana, where on the 7th of February 2018, a Pan-African provider of cloud services and neutral carrier data center services completed its investment with the West African Data Company Limited. The West African Data Company Limited is one of Ghana's carrier neutral data centers, providing services to 20 network operators and service providers from the Accra Data Center, and equally linked to all the 4 submarine cables landing in Ghana. This investment is part of the company's strategy to build a Pan-African platform of data centers and places the company at a digital gateway to the African continent. I move over now to Kenya, where Microsoft for Africa partners with the United States International University for Africa to build the first app factory in Nairobi, Kenya. This app factory is going to provide software engineering skills to university graduates to enable them to have quick access to jobs. Microsoft for Africa aims to develop skills that will make people to be creative to push forward Africa's digital transformation. Africa now has 14 app factories, and of the 1,500 graduates produced last year, 85% secure full-time jobs within 3 months of graduation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sita, Claudia, Andre, and Fontram for sharing the updates from your regions. This brings us to the end of our February briefing on IG. All the developments mentioned by Jovan are described on the observatory at Digital Watch, that is dig.watch. Thank you for participating in today's briefing. The recording, presentation, and the digest will be available soon.